What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be doing another Walking Dead related video, and this is an idea I had for a while. I actually did a video on this on my other channel about 3 years ago, and this is everything I hate about The Walking Dead. So obviously this is my favorite show of all time. I love a lot more about this than the stuff I don't like. So the things I list here, you could probably times it by 10 for the amount of things I love about this show. And if you really wanted me to go into all the things I love about the show, we'd be here for hours upon hours upon hours. But I think it's important to talk about the negatives, talk about the things you don't like, because if you really care about something, I think you do want it to change, you want it to get better, you want it to be something, you want it to be the best version of what it can be. And that's why I always feel the need to kind of critique things on this show way more than most other shows, because of how much I love it. If I don't care that much about it, I might not critique it as much. So my criticism come from a place of love, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie, which I think a lot of people kind of don't understand that, because they see me complaining about the show and they're like, oh, I thought it was your favorite show, why are you always complaining about it? I think that's kind of the reason I'm complaining about it so much, is because I really have high expectations for it, and I really love it so much, and I want it to be as good as it possibly can be. And there's certain things about it that I just haven't really loved. Now, this stuff that I'm gonna be talking about in this video could be stuff that happened only in the earlier seasons, it could be stuff that's only been happening in later seasons, it could be stuff that only happened in the middle seasons, or it could be stuff that happens throughout the entirety of the show. It's not necessarily stuff that's affecting every single episode of every season. Some of these things only affect certain episodes, some of these things only affect certain seasons, but of course it has to be something major enough to affect the whole show. So if it only affects like 1 or 2 episodes, obviously I'm not going to talk about it. It has to be something that really does have a negative impact on the show for my personal enjoyment. I'm not talking about how other people feel. I don't care about that. This is just my opinions, the things that make this show not as enjoyable as I wish it was, even though it's my favorite show. There are definitely low points in this show that I just don't really love as much as the high points, but the highs are just so damn high, which is why, of course, like I said, this is my favorite show. The first thing I want to talk about is the thing that I think affects the show the most out of anything on this list, and honestly, most of the stuff on this list, I think this kind of affects a lot of these things, so keep that in mind. And this is the fact that the show does not have a high enough budget for what it's trying to do. So let me make this very clear. I'm not saying the show has a small budget, because I don't think it does. Compared to most shows, it actually has a much higher budget. But The Walking Dead is such a grand scale thing. There's so many characters, there's a lot of action, it's in the apocalypse, there's zombies. Of course, this is a show that's going to be expensive. The ideas presented in this show, the stuff from the comics, the source material, to translate it over into TV, it's gonna cost them a lot. And the show just does not have the proper budget to maintain that, which is why the show sees a lot, and I mean a lot of things where it almost feels cheap. There's a lot of things in the show that do feel cheap. There's a lot of things in the show that feel like it's just not a high budget property, even though a lot of episodes do feel like high budget. You know, you see episodes like the season 6 premiere or No Way Out or Too Far Gone, a lot of episodes that have clearly somewhat high budgets because there's really well done action sequences, really well done choreography. Clearly it took them time to do, and they put it together very nicely. But then you see stuff like the green screen in season 7 episode 10 when, you know, Rick's, it's like, how do you have such a bad green screen if you have a lot of money for other episodes? Well, it's pretty obvious. They spend money in places they want to, and they don't have enough to spend it for the other stuff. So the little things here and there just feel really off. And the show has had this problem, I think, forever. We don't have much information on the budget, which is a big problem because it's hard to talk about it when we don't actually know what the budget even is. But that's already sus in itself, because why would they be keeping the budget from us if it was a big budget? You know what I mean? Like, if it was a big budget, they would want to share that. If it was like 10 million an episode or something crazy like that, they would 100% let us know. We only have the information on the budget of the first season, which was about 3.4 million per episode, which for a first season, that's really good. That's a really solid budget for the first season. And I think the first season utilized that budget pretty well. It was only 6 episodes, so they were able to use it in an effective way. And of course, there wasn't like a large cast at that point. The cast wasn't getting paid a large chunk of the budget either. So I think things just worked out a lot better. But for some reason, season 2 came along, they cut the budget in half because they expanded the amount of episodes the season was going to have. And AMC just, I guess, didn't trust it enough to keep, you know, viewers being high. So that's why the season was spent completely on a farm. and things just kind of felt lower budget. It was still a good season. I like season 2. It's just clearly there wasn't much to it that required a high budget, and that's because of the fact that they didn't have the high budget, which I think was smart of them. They knew that they didn't have the budget to do anything too crazy, so they were like, okay, let's just keep things chill, stay on a farm, and just do really good, dramatic stories, which they did do. I think season 2 has a lot of amazing storylines, a lot of great acting, and the stuff that they do save the budget for, like the finale, is really good and worthwhile. But then you get to some later seasons, and it just feels like they clearly did not have a budget for certain things. You go into like season 7, for example. Why do you think Rick only shows up in like a couple episodes in the whole season? Because they have to pay Andrew Lincoln a pretty fat amount of money for every episode he's in. So they thought to themselves, well, if we don't have the money for that, let's just put him in less episodes, right? That's the kind of stuff they like to do. Season 8 comes along. Thankfully, Rick was in pretty much every episode except for like 1 or 2. But then that means they had to cut budget in other places. Sometimes some scenes just don't seem very well executed. There's a couple action scenes in that season that just weren't well executed. We go on to season 10, so many iconic battles from the comics were just scrapped. Stuff like Negan vs. Beta, scrapped. The big field battle, scrapped. And they all kind of get diluted to these much smaller scale things because they can't do it. They just can't do something crazy and make it work. Can they do big budget things? Yes, and they sometimes do. It's just they can't always do it. They can't have it happen every episode. They can't have it happen often. And sometimes you see that. You're like, okay, why didn't we see this particular scene of this character killing these walkers? Why did they cut over that? Probably because they just didn't feel like filming the scene. They didn't want to add more money to the show in order to film that scene. They just thought, we'll cut over it. No one's going to care. But to me, it affects the show. And sometimes some stuff just seems choppy. It seems like it was not really well done. Sometimes the CGI is choppy and pretty shit, to be honest, in some episodes. Way worse in the older seasons. I think they've gotten better with CGI over time. Like Shiva was a great example of CGI. That's where they clearly put a lot of their budget into, and I think I was really impressed with that. But there's a lot of instances where it's like, this is just terrible CGI, and it's clearly not very good. Now, what's the solution to this? I'm not going to give a solution to everything on this list, but I think the solution is AMC needs to stop being so cheap. That's honestly the solution. It's AMC's fault, to be completely honest. Now, this show had something going for it. They were making a lot of money from getting a lot of viewers back in season 5, 6, and all that. But then the viewers started to die down, and ultimately the budget likely died a little bit with it. I'm not 100% sure on that. Again, we don't have the numbers, so I can't be 100% on that. But the problem is, the show started to lose viewers at the same time where the show was starting to get so much bigger. They were introducing so many new communities, so many new characters. They were going into all-out war, so we're going to have this big action-packed season. The Whisper War was right after that, so more action. And they just didn't have the budget for all of this to make it as good as it possibly can be. Now, is there some great stuff there? Of course there is. I'm not trying to act like we've never had anything good. Clearly, I don't feel that way if this is my favorite show of all time. But there has been enough instances in these seasons that I just didn't like, and I felt like the budget was a big, monumental part of that. AMC, if they put more money into it, I think they could have made episodes better, and I think people would have been less likely to stop watching. People were getting bored of some of the filler stuff that they do sometimes in between episodes. People are getting bored of that, and I think they wouldn't have gotten bored if they just put more money into it. Would that have been so hard? I don't know. You could have cut down the length of the seasons as well. That would have also allowed them to allocate the resources a little bit better between the seasons. There's a lot of solutions. There's a ton of solutions. I don't think what they're trying to do now is a good idea. And I think the reason why the show's ending is because of the budget. They don't have the proper budget to keep the show going, and they have to pay licensing fees. They have to pay for, I think, licensing fees to Kirkman as well as to Netflix. And I don't know exactly how that works, but I know that's taking money away from the budget. That's all I know. That's a problem, obviously, if they're taking money out of the budget to give to Netflix to allow their platform to be on Netflix, but it's also already on their own platform. So it's weird how they have to pay Netflix for that, as well as just putting it on their own streaming platform. That doesn't get many people, to be honest. I mean, it gets enough, but it's obviously not going to have nearly as many as what's on Netflix, which is why they want to keep the show on Netflix in the first place. And then, of course, Robert Kirkman, who owns the series, they have to pay him. There's a whole lawsuit with that happened a few years ago, and I don't know what turned out with that. But I think that's why they're ending the show. They want to end it so they can just do their own spin-offs and just have it go from there. And the reason why I say that is because they're continuing the storylines of a lot of the characters. They're doing a Daryl spin-off. They're doing a Maggie Negan spin-off. They're doing all these spin-offs, oh, and the Rick movies as well, which might have Michonne in them. All the characters' stories are continuing after season 11, a lot of the main characters. So I thought to myself, why not just do a season 12 then? Why do you have to end this series? If you're going to have all the characters have more story, just put it all into one series, make it less complicated. That makes a lot of sense to me, right? Well, no, the reason why they're not doing that is because they don't want to pay these licensing fees anymore. They just want to start over, basically, start fresh with a bunch of little spin-offs that they probably don't have to pay the same licensing fees for. Because they don't have the money for it. That's honestly it. Or not that they don't have the money, it's that they don't want to use the money for it. They don't want to put that money towards this series. That's why I'm afraid these spin-offs are going to be probably a little bit lower budget, just because there's so many of them. They have to kind of allocate resources between all of them. I don't know how that's going to work exactly. I'm nervous that it's just not going to turn out the best. And they've had a lot of instances with this. I mean, you look at the bonus episodes, they call it COVID episodes. Those were only done because of money. Those are literally only done because of money. The fact that the story was affected in a way that changes the show a lot. I mean, adding 6 episodes that don't really do much for the series, that's going to turn off a lot of people. I mean, if someone is sitting there at episode 16 of season 10 and they know they have to watch 6 more episodes that don't really do anything for the story, they might just stop watching right there. They literally might just stop watching. And honestly, I was sick of those episodes. I only watched them because I was a huge fan of The Walking Dead, right? A couple of them I enjoyed just for the characters and because I like the actors so much. Obviously, the Negan episode was phenomenal. It's the only one I'm kind of excluding out of this. But those other episodes, yeah, some of them had some good moments and such, but at the end of the day, they were kind of pointless. They didn't feel necessary, and it's all because they just wanted to make some money during the pandemic, and they knew the only way they could do that is by making new episodes that they had to have a really low budget for because they had to film during the pandemic. It's just it's an annoying thing. I mean, most series, like look at Stranger Things, they just delay it. They delay it for 3 whole years. It was supposed to come out, well, no, it was supposed to come out like probably late 2020, early 2021, something like that. But still, from after season 3, it took them 3 whole years to come out season 4, and it's paying off. I'm on episode 4 now. I just finished episode 4, and holy shit, the budget they put towards that series is monumental. It's insane. And they took time with it. They took their sweet time. The Walking Dead, unfortunately, because of the budget, they rushed stuff. And you can tell. You can tell it's being rushed. No matter how good no matter how good a lot of the story is, no matter how good a couple of the episodes are, yes, a lot of it's rushed. A lot of it is. I know that was a huge rant, but it's just how I feel, and I had to get that off my chest. Next thing I don't like, also kind of connected to budget, is when they do things specifically for ratings to try to increase the ratings, and they don't feel like they were done for the story's sake. Could they have been done for the story's sake? Sure, maybe. I have no idea, but I don't trust that they were. An example of this would be like the season 6 cliffhanger is a big one. I'm almost confident that AMC wanted them to do that in order to get as many people watching season 7 premiere as possible. Some of the fake out deaths that they do, I mean, they do a lot of stuff like that in this series. They do a lot of cliffhangers. I don't really like them. Cliffhangers work if they're like earned and they actually build up good hype for the next episode rather than making you pissed off. And a lot of the cliffhangers in The Walking Dead just kind of make you angry. They don't make you excited, they make you angry. That's not a good thing. You need to make your cliffhangers something that makes people go, holy shit, what's going to happen next? And sometimes they do that. I'm not saying every single instance of cliffhangers in the show is shit, but a lot of them do feel like they were done just because they don't trust the fact that people are going to come back to watch the next episode. They don't trust that people are going to watch more. So they're like, okay, how do we get them to watch more? I would rather they just told the damn story they want to tell. And if people don't like it, they don't like it. If they like it, they do. That's what they should be doing. That's what creators should be doing, but it doesn't feel that way. It feels like they're just doing it so they get more people to watch. And I don't like that. A couple of these things I'm talking about here kind of have to do with a similar topic, which I would say is the story changing and being affected in ways that has nothing to do with the writer's decisions and rather things outside of that, external factors. And one of them, of course, being the ratings, the AMC wanting higher ratings, so they do things like that. Another big thing is actors leaving. This is probably the biggest example of actors leaving I've ever seen in a show before. And obviously I haven't seen a million shows, so this might be a big thing in other shows as well. But The Walking Dead has had so many actors leaving just by choice, right? And of course they have the right to do that, unless they're, under contract, but they have the right to leave if they don't want to do more episodes. That's completely fair. But it does affect the story pretty heavily. And maybe if they had a higher budget, they could be spending more money on contracts to keep these actors there. But there's a lot of times, and they make it work. They do. That's the thing I love about these writers, that they make it work. They do it. There's a lot of situations where, of course, I want to see that character go on because their comic version was really important. Like, for example, Dale. Dale was a pretty big comic character. I would, not huge, but somewhat huge in like the prison arc and such. And of course, I would have liked him seen there, but the actor wanted to leave because of Frank Darabont leaving, so it was an external factor. It was not a writer decision. He just wanted to leave, and they made it work, and they made Dale's death really impactful. So I was okay with it. But at the end of the day, that wasn't the original vision. That wasn't the original idea the writers likely had. And I know most shows deal with this. I doubt every single show is just, oh, it's perfectly exactly what they wanted to happen. I'm sure things always change and get affected. That happens with everything. With everything. But yes, it still happens here a lot. And it affects the show a lot. Obviously, it's affected the recent seasons a lot more. Look at Rick and Michonne leaving. That has affected the show tremendously. They made it work. I think they did. But it has affected the show tremendously. It's not their original vision. It's not their original plan. And that, to me, is an issue. That, to me, affects it. Even Sasha, I believe, was not a character that was originally supposed to be killed off. I believe the actress had to go film something else. It affected Fear the Walking Dead a lot as well. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about The Walking Dead now. But it has affected the other spinoffs as well. And like I said, it's not a good thing. And again, kind of connected to that is when showrunners and writers leave, that affects the vision that was originally there. We've gone through like 4 showrunners in this, maybe even 5 in the Walking Dead franchise, which isn't a terrible thing. You know, it gives the series some fresh new light, gives the series some diversity. It feels different over time. Of course, like when Angela Kang took over, there definitely felt like there was a big change in tone and such, which could be good, could be bad. I like consistency, but I also like diversity. It just depends on what type of consistency and what type of diversity we're talking about. But when like a lot of the writers, especially like the big writers in the room and such, when they leave and new ones come in, the visions just start to change. They start to shift, and what was built up before by previous writers doesn't like feel like it was properly continued for the new writers. I mean, if you look at the season 1 to like 3 writers, they're very different than the current writers. They are. So you know for damn sure the vision that those original writers had probably isn't being fulfilled anymore. And it definitely isn't in terms of the showrunners. I mean, you look at like Frank Darabont and his vision for season 1 and onward, it was completely different than the other showrunners. Then Glenn Matarazzo was his name? I forget his exact name. He was season 3 showrunner. He definitely had different visions, and that's actually one of the reasons he was, you know, removed as showrunner. I don't know exactly what happened with that, if he left or if he was fired. I don't know exactly what happened with that, but I know there was very big conflict in visions in season 3, especially in what to do with the rest of the series, and Scott Gimple took over, and some people love what Scott Gimple did with the show, some people hate it. I personally really enjoy a lot of his seasons. I think 4 through 6 is some of my favorite stuff from The Walking Dead ever. And season 7 and 8 has a lot of highs, but there's also a lot of downs as well. And then Angela Kang took over, and again, I love season 9 so much, but then season 10 and 11 I haven't like loved all that much, but I can't really be sure if it's the showrunner's fault or if it's something unrelated to the showrunners. I don't know. It could be just the writers as well. But I think a big reason that the show does not feel as connected between the seasons as it should is because of that. It's because of the writers always changing and showrunners changing. You don't have something like Breaking Bad where Vince Gilligan is just writing like pretty much everything. Of course, he has, you know, a team of helpers as well, a team of writers, but it's still his baby. It's his thing all the way through. Whereas in The Walking Dead, it does not feel like it's anyone's person. It just feels like a product that's being worked upon by a large community of people. And yes, there is such thing as too many cooks in the kitchen. And I think the Walking Dead writing team has that problem. I mean, there's some times where I feel like character arcs are just thrown out the window, and it's like, well, what the hell happened to that character's arc? And then some other character just randomly gets screen time, and there's some new things we learn about them that we've never heard before. And it's like, well, it feels like something that was just kind of brought up out of nowhere by a writer, and they just went with it. And a lot of the time it works. It does. It completely works, because a lot of the show is amazing. But sometimes it also doesn't work. And that's something to keep in mind. Another thing that has to do with changing the story for external factors is when the writers kind of change the story based on fan feedback. And this one I talked about on Twitter like a few months ago, and people were kind of confused. They're like, well, what do you mean by that? It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll try my best to explain the best way I can. So I feel like The Walking Dead, the team of writers and such, they're very, very much interconnected with the community. I think they do talk to a lot of community members a lot. They definitely hear our reactions and people's reviews and such. And because they care, they want to make the show the best it can possibly be for as many people. And that's fair. But I don't really like when writers do that. I want writers to tell a story, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. Simple as that. I don't want them to be appealing to people. I don't want them to be trying to do fan servicey things. Sometimes a little bit of fan service is cool. Like I love, like, you know, little Easter eggs and cameos. Like that's cool. If you can make it work, awesome. Like an example of that would be like, I don't know, people were mad that a certain character didn't get like screen time with a certain character in earlier seasons. So then they're like, okay, well, we'll try to make that work in, because it's like feedback in a positive way. But then there's also times where I really don't like it, because what if that just was never their original vision? If the original vision was to never have those characters interact, then why force an interaction between them just because fans wanted it? If that was never something you intended on doing, and that was never something you thought was necessary for the story, don't force it in just because fans want to see it. You know what I mean? And I think that happens a lot in this show. And you can even go further and talk about character deaths. People were stopping watching the show completely because of how many main characters were dying, and I think they got nervous about that, so they just stopped killing off main characters. Like, the only characters that have died the past couple of seasons have honestly been characters that I don't think the community likes that much. There's a couple main ones there, for sure. I think, you know, Tara's a pretty big character. I think Enid was, I don't know, she was not that big, but still there, I guess. But, like, no, like, really huge characters have died the past, like, 3 or 4 seasons. Well, 3 seasons, I guess. When you go to 4 seasons, you get to season 8, and that's obviously where they killed off a lot of main characters. Well, season 7 killed off a lot of main characters. Season 8 only killed off Carl, really. I mean, what other main characters? I don't know. I'm off topic. But I think the thing is, I think they probably planned on killing more main characters. I really do. I think they definitely had a lot of other ideas and changed them, because they were like, no, people don't want to see us killing off their fan favorites anymore. So let's just stop doing it. And I don't like that. I want them, again, to tell the story that they want to tell. That's why I love films so much. That's why I love shows. I love them because I like to see people's creative ideas come to life. I like to see people's visions come to life. I want to see what they want to do fully and completely. I don't want to see a product that's been tampered with by studios. I don't want to see stuff that has been changed around because fans won't like it or something. Like, I don't give a shit. Just do what you want to do, and if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. Simple as that. That is, to me, the beauty of film and writing and all that stuff. But I just don't think this show does that very well. It's been a very long series as well. It's season 11 they're on now, so I think it's obviously bound to happen. They're going to start listening to what people want. I mean, even think about Daryl Dixon. People were absolutely in love with Daryl Dixon from the moment we met him, and that's why they kept him around. They actually planned on killing him off pretty early on in the series. Of course, I'm glad they kept him around because I do love Daryl and I think he's a great part of the show, but it does still kind of make you think, well, that wasn't their vision. That wasn't what they wanted. Did they even have a vision? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know how far had these people planned these things, but they should. And now I feel like the most recent stuff's getting really affected, especially with the pandemic and such, and a lot of shows haven't let the pandemic ruin it. I don't think every show has let the pandemic affect their story, but The Walking Dead is the one case where I really feel like the pandemic got in the way of a lot of what they were trying to do. Completely. The Walking Dead, like the Rick movies, those were supposed to come out like 2 years ago or something. They always had them planned for like only a couple years later, and then that got in the way. So then, like, what the hell's happening now? I think they probably switched around the story and what was going to be happening in that movie just because of the pandemic, which I don't think they should do. They should have just delayed it. They should have just delayed everything if they really had to. But instead, they just probably started changing around story, making it fit, making it work, when I just don't think that's the solution. Again, a lot of assumptions here, but I think they're reasonable assumptions to make. Another thing I'm not going to harp on too much because it's a pretty simple thing. The dialogue in some of the seasons I haven't really liked too much. Some of the dialogue's incredible. I really do think a lot of this show's dialogue is phenomenal and just really works well. But then you have some where it's just not very good. Sometimes we'll have like over-the-top philosophical conversations or speeches from characters that just feel really inorganic. Now, sometimes it obviously works, like King Ezekiel, he's supposed to talk like that, like that's a purposeful thing. Even the junkyard people, I think that made sense why they were talking the way they did and saying the things they were. Morgan is batshit crazy, so the crazy things he says makes sense. But then there's some characters where they'll just have these conversations and it doesn't feel like something that a character should be saying. It doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like organic in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes they'll force conversation just to give exposition, which is another thing I can add onto this list. I don't like exposition dumping, and I don't think this show has done it that much in the past, but for some reason the past couple seasons, I think they honestly assume the fandom is kind of dumb and can't piece the things together on their own, so they will literally spoon feed us things that I don't think we need to be spoon fed, just so people will understand what's going on. There's like no subtlety, there's no nuance in a lot of this stuff, especially with Commonwealth. I feel like Commonwealth especially, when they first got there completely, I mean, it was just like boatload of exposition when it comes to what Commonwealth is as a community. But I want more nuance, I want more subtlety. That is to me what makes a much better series, and I don't really think the series did a great job with that. And a big part of it is the dialogue. The dialogue is so damn important to making things feel organic and making things feel real, and I think making things feel organic is the most important thing to a show or movie, because I want to feel like I'm watching a story unfold. I don't want to feel like I'm watching actors portraying other characters on screen. And if the dialogue doesn't feel organic, I might feel that way. So that's really important to me. Another thing, this is tied to writing, characters doing dumb and out of character things just to get us into intense situations. I think this series, sometimes I'm making that very clear as much as I can, because I know I'm going to get a lot of comments being like, well, what about this? What about that? Sometimes, not every time, sometimes, intense situations in the show will only happen because characters will do a dumb thing, or they'll do something very out of character that just does not feel like their character at all, and that'll cause a problem because they just don't know how to write an intense situation that happens for any other reason. So an example I can come up with for this is Daryl in season 8. I mean, he's the reason they get into this big situation with the walkers at the sanctuary, with the Saviors being able to escape because he tries to like accelerate the plan a little bit faster, and that ends up allowing the Saviors to escape pretty easily, which they could have just had the Saviors escape without Daryl doing that. Like, they didn't have to have Daryl do that. It just made Daryl feel like a really stupid character to get us into this situation. Why? It was out of character completely because he was just dealing with the fact that he caused Glenn's death by doing something stupid, which that was written well. Daryl was in a very reckless state of mind at that point in the series. So yes, it makes complete sense why he'd punch Negan in the face and get Glenn killed, and that worked. It did a lot for his character. But Daryl being reckless in season 8 did not make any sense. It did not make any sense, and it was just to get us in an intense situation. I don't like that. That's just an example. Many other cases of this in the entire show. I'm not just going to pick on that one little thing, but that is one time where I do feel like that was a problem. I don't want to say that all the time. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it works when a character does something dumb. I don't want the characters to be complete superheroes and never do anything wrong. That would be boring. I want them to make mistakes. I want them to have flaws. But it has to be in character flaws. If they just learn from their mistakes and then they just do it again, it just feels so unearned and just stupid. And the last thing I want to talk about, the final thing, which I think is more important than people make it out to be. The fact that the walkers are so incredibly unthreatening. Now, keep in mind, when I say this, I don't mean that I want the show to be focused on the walkers as a threat the whole time. I don't. I'm glad they moved away from that. I'm glad it's mainly about the people now. That's what the show should be about. That's what it's always been about. But even the walkers as a side thing, they never feel threatening in the show at all. And the only time they are threatening is either if, again, a character is being very dumb and gets themselves in a situation they shouldn't have, or if they're in a group and they're like in a close quarter situation and it's like, okay, yeah, then obviously they're gonna get in trouble, and that's where walkers become dangerous. But when you come across one walker in an open field, or even if you come across a herd of walkers in an open field, as long as you're not anywhere near your base, they're not that dangerous. Just go away from them. Like, it's not that hard to fight them. There's only one or two. It's not difficult, but it should be, because realistically speaking, the characters in the show take care of walkers way too easily. They should not be dying with a knife. This should not do enough. Every time they kill a walker, and a lot of times they do this just fine. Again, this is just certain instances. But every time they kill a walker with a knife, they should be putting their whole damn force into it. I want to see a character go like that and pull it out. I do not want to see, like, for example, Jesse, season 6, episode 5, killed a walker by going like this. That's not going to kill the walker. The skull is not just gonna magically rotten over like course of like a year. That's just not how skulls work. That's not how bones work. That's not how it works. Okay, just because it's a walker does not mean the skull is gonna be rotten and gooey and sticky so they can just stick a knife in it. No, it's gonna still have to crack through the skull. And you need to put force to do that. Yes, the skin stuff and the muscle, that's gonna be softer. That's gonna be rotten away. The skull is not. And it always frustrates me, and I know why they do it. Going back to the budget, it's full circle, comes full circle. The budget is, I think, the reason why this is the case, because think about it. How much harder is it to film something where you have to have the actor go really hard, really close to the walker's head, which is obviously a person there, it's an extra who's wearing the walker makeup, going really close to the head. If you go really hard, that puts that person at risk, so they have to do a lot more training, a lot more takes, and make it as safe as they can, take a lot of precautions, and guess what? All that stuff I just said there costs more money. So you know what they say? Well, let's just make it a little bit different. So let's just have you go really soft with your hit, so you don't accidentally risk punching the extra in the face, so we can do this in a safe and efficient way and just get it done that way. But then you make the show look stupid, because it's like, that shouldn't have happened. They should put the proper time towards making these scenes make sense. And if you can't do that, if you can't have that work, then don't have the characters use knives anymore. Have them use guns, have them use bow and arrows, have them use like long range, like melee weapons that they can easily use in a way that's not putting the extras at risk. But if you are so scared of that happening, then don't let them use small knives. And it's simple as that. Like I get so frustrated in this show when that happens. Or like I said, just make the damn walkers more threatening. Have more instances, and sometimes this happens, and I do like it, but it doesn't happen frequently enough, where a character tries to stab a walker in the head, and he has to go at it more than one. He has to like go like this multiple times before it actually goes through the skull and penetrates the brain. That would be so much more realistic, and would actually make the walkers still feel threatening, even when there's just one of them. Make them more aggressive too. The amount of times in this show, walkers just kind of wander around, and they don't actually do much, and even though a person's like right there, and it's like they should be like aggressively trying to grab at you, or like, I don't know, they'll just be like one coming really slow. I know they're walkers, I know they go slow, but that slow, I don't know. I feel like I've seen them be pretty aggressive before. If you have them all be very aggressive, well then shit, things become very damn threatening. A character's going up to one walker, you have to be very certain you can get a good clean hit with that knife so you can kill the walker. Because if you don't get a clean hit, it might like push you out and then like bite at your neck. It might do something, and then it could be a lot more threatening. I know just recently they introduced running walkers to World Beyond, which I still think is really stupid for so many reasons. A, because the main series is like ending soon, and B, because it's just a lazy way of writing so the walkers can be more threatening. They wanted the walkers to be more threatening, so they were like, okay, let's just have them run then. They don't have to run, just make them more aggressive and make it so they don't have the squishiest brains or the squishiest skulls known to man. I think the solution's simple. I think it's easy. Apparently, it's not. I will see you all in my next video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you hate about The Walking Dead? If you want to see me do the same thing for what I love about The Walking Dead, let me know. Because trust me, there's a lot more I love about this show. So much more. I can go on and on about the stuff I love. But these are the things that I think kind of hold this series back a little bit. And I think obviously a big part of that is the budget. If it was higher, I think a lot of these issues just wouldn't exist. So yeah, it is what it is. So I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.